Tēnā koe Sue, how are you?
Tēnā koe, Nikki. I am well and looking forward to doing this.
Well, we really appreciate you giving your time just to talk a little bit about the work that you do and help members of the public understand your role and also the coaches and the mediators that will be working alongside you. So, for those that don't know you, I wondered if you can just give us a bit of background, who you are, how you got here.
Sure. So I initially was working as a kindergarten teacher and then a kindergarten manager, and I became interested in mediation. And so I trained as a mediator, and at that time I thought, the one kind of mediation I don't want to do is family mediation. So, but then somehow, of course, as these things do, that's what I ended up doing. So about 10 years ago, I started doing, first of all, I was running parenting through separation courses, and then I began to work as a family dispute mediator. And then uh, I then started to do Voice of Child work. At that point, I was working for Family Works and FDR Centre. Um, and now I mainly do Voice of Child, and there's only one supplier now, that's Fairway, so I contract to them. Yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Yes. So the government, 1st of July last year it was, wasn't it? Made the service free for everybody, in fact, so that can include your services as doing the child inclusion and voice of child work, and obviously the mediation work as well. So, yeah, I think today's focus is going to be about your work with children, hopefully to give parents an understanding of the work you do and some reassurance around what the process is like for them, but obviously for the kids as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just before we start, you referenced parenting through separation. If you wouldn't mind just letting people know what a little bit more about what that is.
Yeah. So it's really an opportunity for parents to come along and hear some information, and to get some thoughts on, uh, how best to manage separation. And it really focuses on the impact of separation on the children. So it's not a therapy group, it's really to give people information. Although, having said that, I think people do get a lot of support from being with other people who are in a similar situation. And you don't come along with your ex-partner, you actually come along, you're not allowed to, you
Mm.
have to be separate. And it's 4 hours of time, and it's really talking about what are the best ways of managing how you talk to your children, how you interact with the other, your co-parent. And then there's 2 hours of legal, what happens if you decide to go to court, what is the process like? So it's really about having knowledge and information, to help you navigate that time. And often people come, they may have been separated for years, but they come back to it. Sometimes people are referred by the courts, but it's generally a very helpful um, activity, just to sort of, so that you're really thinking about what you're doing. I think it's yeah.
Yeah, so just um, the videos, the lived experience of the kids, and again, this is free. The course is free. We're on the Ministry of Justice website. You can find a provider that's near you, or it is available online as well. So,
Mm,
yeah, it's a really good resource, isn't it? Yeah,
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so let's get on to you and the work that you're currently doing. I just wonder what you wish every parent knew before they agree for their child to participate in your services.
Yeah. No, that I think what I think is important is to understand that your children are in the middle of this process. Parents often say, oh, I know what Jimmy wants, I know exactly what he's going to say. And they
Mm.
may be right, but actually sometimes they hear things in the feedback that they weren't expecting. And it's really just an opportunity for parents to sit together and hear from their children what it's like for them, And so, um, I mean, the important thing is, and this is very, very clear in all the information that you get from Fairway, that your child is not going to be asked to choose. Your child is not going to be making any decisions, but really they're providing you with insight into how it is for them. And it's often really profound. And you can see that for the parents, it can be quite a game changer, in terms of just seeing, okay, I mean, often parents will think that they're managing very well to keep any sort of conflict away from their children. But I mean, you probably know this, Nikki, but children are like giraffes. They have these antennae and they can smell what's going on. They kind of really, and so for parents to hear, their child saying, "Oh, I just wish that my parents wouldn't fight so much." It can be really profound. So yeah, I think the fear with this process is around parents thinking that the other parent is going to coach the child, that they're going to hear things that they, don't want to hear, which they may well do. But the value of it is that when they're then making decisions, they're making decisions with that as a kind of, something that's their child's experiences. So I think it can be really, really valuable. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so for the children, they've got the opportunity to share with somebody who isn't mum or dad, because sometimes what mum hears or dad is not actually the same thing. So they might each believe they know what little Jimmy's going to say, but actually what you're hearing might be something different and it might be news to the parents. So I just wonder, in terms of reassurance for parents, what's the conversation like with the children, in the way that you explain to them about confidentiality and about how the process is working? Who's the boss today?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, first of all, parents are given a lot of information beforehand about how the process works and how to talk to their children. They're encouraged to um, have the children understand what the questions are. They may be around schooling or um, care and contact arrangements, so that's already happened beforehand. But when I meet with the children, I'm really clear with them that they can say or not say as much or as little as they want to, and that it's really their parents have both agreed to this, and so the value is that they're going to give their parents some help really in making decisions, and that if at the end of the process I say to them, so okay, this is what you've said, is this what you want your mum and dad to hear? And I just go over really everything that they've said, to make sure that that's what they want passed on. And sometimes they tell me things and then they say, oh, but maybe not that, because they're really conscious of not wanting to hurt either parent. That's often the underlying kind of uh, gesture of children is, oh, I don't want to hurt. They don't say it, but you can just tell that they really want to make everything okay. So yeah.
Mm.
Um, and in terms of confidentiality, the children, I assure them that unless they tell me something really, that someone's in danger, I obviously have to act on that. But otherwise, that the information will just be between them and me, and then I will go to the mediation and just pass on what they say
Mm.
to their mum and dad. And then when they leave the mediation, the meeting, I say, well, you can obviously you can talk to your mum and dad about what you've said, but if they ask you questions, which parents are encouraged not to, you can say, yeah, you'll hear it when you get to the mediation. Sue will tell you what I want you to know. So yeah, so it's a very gentle process in some ways. It's not, parents are often worried. And the interesting thing that parents often say to me is, I don't want my child to be involved in this. That's adult stuff, and I don't want, they really want to protect their children from all that stuff. And I think that I completely understand that. And the children are involved. The children, really know what's going on. And very rarely are they as kind of in the dark as the parents would think. And they're not, they're it is an odd situation. They are meeting a person that they don't know. And I say that to them. I say, it must be a bit weird talking to me, about your family stuff. Um, and then at the end of it, I just have a little chat with them about what it's like. And, they always say, look, they kind of may have been dreading it, but actually at the end of it, they're like, no, no, it was fine. It was good, And I think for children to have that experience, because these are things that affect them, they affect their everyday lives, So I think for them to have that experience of having someone listen to them that's not their mum or dad, that's not someone who has any kind of connection with them, can be very empowering for them. And even if what, they say they want, or, if they do express some sort of opinion about it doesn't happen, I still think they feel like somehow they've been heard, and, that there's something, that can come of it that might be helpful for them. And I mean, at the end, I say to them, well, who do you want to tell you? Do you want to know about the outcome of the mediation? And sometimes they say no. Sometimes they say yes. And then it's a question of who did they want to tell them, their mum, their dad, the mediator, me. And so they get to choose how they get fed back about that. And the parents are given information about that process as well. So I think it's an opportunity. It's a real opportunity for parents to have insight. And, sometimes they expect a lot, they expect to hear a lot more than they do. And so they're a bit disappointed that they didn't actually hear the thing that they thought they were going to hear. And sometimes there's a little bit of surprise about what they do hear. But I think generally it's an aligning process. It's an opportunity for the parents to align with each other by hearing from their child about what it's like for them. So it can be really powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like a very gentle, child-led, child-focused process. And children, well, look, I can't imagine anyone not feeling comfortable with you, Sue, but can you tell me a little bit about how you do make the children comfortable in those meetings?
Yeah. I mean, it starts really with where the meetings are. So generally they're well, they're always in a neutral place, and sometimes they're at the school. So there's a little bit of a conversation with the parents, and they consult with the children, because some children are very happy to have something at school, and some children would prefer not. So that's a little bit about finding the right location. And then generally I sit with them, and although I talk to the children individually, if there's siblings, we all have a little chat at the beginning where we talk about, what the mediation process is. And depending on their age, it's very much dependent on that. Explaining a little bit about mediation and what's going to happen, and really making sure that they're happy to take part. And, just reassuring them, if at any point you don't want to take part, you can say that you don't want to. Or, if I ask a question and you don't know the answer, I'm like, you can just say, I don't know. And trying to make it, I know it sounds odd, but it's kind of funny as possible, to have it as be an engaging and fun experience. So it's not a deadly serious activity. So we might do um, drawings, or we might play a game. And I have a lot of conversation at the beginning with them about what do they like at school and what's their favorite color and what's their favorite food, and tell me about your friends. So it's really trying to establish that rapport at the beginning. And you can tell for some children they're very nervous and other children are very confident. So yeah, it's about meeting the child where they are, and finding out what they're like. So yeah.
Yeah.
And I use should have brought them with me, these bear cards, which really help children they're just a whole range of pictures of bears with different emotions. And these can be really helpful because children often don't know, or no, they know what they're feeling, but they don't often have the vocabulary to express it. So they might. So I they can choose. When you look at these cards, which do you think you feel most like if you were to choose a bear?
Mm.
And it can be really, and they really. I'm always impressed by children and um, how how they take on the process. They really genuinely want to help. Yeah. So
Yeah. Well, that's lovely. So I'm sure some parents imagine more an interview style, but actually it sounds really playful and light and just asking questions, open questions that allow the children to share a little bit more just about their daily life, let alone what's going on with mum and dad. So it's not
mm,
all focused on the separation and certainly isn't a negative focus. It's more about what's this been like for you.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, okay. And you know
Mm,
what? Our children are expected to live across two homes, sometimes for more than a decade, sometimes for
yeah.
the majority of their childhood. And so finding a bit more out about, hey, what makes this easy for you or hard for you? In one of my recent mediations, one of the little girls had just said that her backpack on the day where she does the swap over from mum and dad's, and she's got her judo gear and all the other bits and pieces. She said it's just so heavy, right?
Yeah,
And mum
yeah,
and
yeah.
dad actually didn't realize because for them it's not that heavy.
Yeah,
So,
no.
it gave us the
Yeah,
opportunity to figure out, well, what's the best way to move this gear from one house to another
yeah,
without literally our child doing the heavy lifting? Because
yeah,
there's heavy lifting to be done. It should be done
yeah,
by the parents or by the caregivers for sure.
yeah,
So earlier you mentioned that children are like little giraffes with their antennae up, and I sometimes talk about them as emotional barometers. They feel what's going on in the atmosphere and in the air. So knowing that they do hear and see and pick up on a lot, I'm wondering if there are common things that come through when you're interviewing children.
I mean, there are quite a range. There's quite a continuum of experience. I mean, one of the probably the most common one is that sense of children being caught in the middle.
Mm.
Um, I had a really interesting when I first started out, I was uh, going to run one of these parenting through separation sessions, and I was in the supermarket because I had to buy milk for the cup of tea, and I was looking at all the dairy options, and next to me was uh, a mother and a daughter, and the daughter would have been about, I'm going to say 12, and the mother said, "So." I'm just eavesdropping. So, to the daughter, "So what sort of cream cheese does your father buy?" And the daughter kind of went, "Oh my God, what's the right kind of cream cheese?" And was desperately looking around for the right answer. And she went, Philadelphia. And the mother said, "Well, why does he buy that? What does he buy that for?" And I think in that moment, it just made me realize how in the most everyday situations, how children are caught in that trap of wanting to get it right, wanting, as I said, to make sure that both parents are okay. And I think that's probably the biggest theme, that I come across is children feeling torn between their parents. And it may, I mean, the cream cheese incident is a very simple. it's not like you could have a big thing about cream cheese, but you could see in that moment the anguish on that child's face was quite something, and it was a very just day-to-day sort of that. And I understand parent, that I can totally understand how parents get into that situation, but um, so if parents can be really aware of the fact that your child wants to respect you both, wants to love you both, and wants to feel that they can move between houses. They don't have to be on high alert all the time. Can I say this? Is this going to go badly? And, you know, not asking your children to be messengers. I think that's one of the hardest things, if particularly um, you know, the message then isn't received well, and then the child feels responsible for that. So I think it's about being really conscious of keeping the adult things at the adult level so the child isn't involved in those. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I talked about a literal heavy weight of a bag, but actually, there's a heavy weight that children can carry emotionally. And as you say, that almost fight or flight response of constantly being conscious of, is this going to hurt someone's feelings? Is this going to make life harder? They are very aware often that parents might have their own emotional baggage. Not everyone's through separation to the point of having adjusted, accepted, moved on. So kids really do want to look after their parents as well.
Yeah.
Actually, just thinking of your story of the cream cheese, I had a similar one at the orthodontist where this probably 12-year-old boy is being asked to call his dad to organize the next appointment because it's dad's turn to take you next time. So now we're putting this on you as the young person to figure out and sort out. I
Mm.
actually felt stressed, let alone him. So, just helping parents to hear those things, how it makes the kids feel with some of these more sort of day-to-day things, perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so if you heard something from a child that indicated that maybe they are not safe, either at a parent's home or in some other circumstance in their life, what's the procedure then? What would actually happen?
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, I reassure the child that, that I've heard what they've got to say. And then it's really there's quite a lot of support at Fairway for Voice of Child practitioners to contact Fairway, and they have a child protection team who then would look at what's been said, because sometimes it's not, it's not a black and white issue. A child might say something and you might go, oh, I'm not sure about that. So you're not acting on your own in that scenario.
Hmm.
And then the child protection team will then make decisions about how that's what happens next, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not a reactive process. It's you sort of maybe hearing some information, bearing in mind that sometimes the way that children phrase things or report things is not always accurate.
Exactly.
Some kids in those sort of earlier years, it can take them a lot longer than others to be a little bit more realistic about life. Some of it still is in more of an imagination capacity. So, yeah, just knowing there's somebody there to
Yeah.
support you, making sure that we don't hear something and go, oh gosh, now we need to, you know.
Yeah. Push the red button. Yeah.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And what about for the parents? If we're not talking about something that's a safety concern, but something that's making their children or child unhappy, um, and it's hard feedback to hear, and maybe that's
Mm.
for one parent or maybe it's for both parents, but how is that normally handled?
Yeah, it's a balance really between, um, I mean, part of what I do when I talk to the parents initially to set up the meetings is get a sense of what they call what I call the parent responsiveness. So how responsive are they to hearing, about their child, So I get a little bit of a sense of that when I'm setting up the meetings. And then when I come to give the feedback, I genuinely am obligated to pass on what the child has said. And so to try and do that in a way that is as because what I want is for the parent to hear it and to be able to take it on, so it's about um maybe preparing them that there may be things that they that might be difficult to hear, and maybe if they need to have a break afterwards. And I generally, if that's going to be something I think is going to be an issue, I will liaise with the mediator and we'll work out an actual plan around how that works. That I think it is important for both parents to hear the same feedback in the same way. I think that's pretty much a priority. I mean, I did have a child recently who was very conscious of, not wanting to hurt either parent, and he said to me, okay, he was I think he was 15. He said, okay, I want you to tell, because he had things that he wanted to tell each parent. He said, well, then he was a bit reluctant. And then he said, well, what about, this was his idea, which was interesting. What about if you could tell my dad this thing, I don't like him. I can't remember what it was, but, I don't like him shouting or, in a separate meeting. So that's what I did. And then he had some advice for his mother as well. So, it was kind of, both of them he really wanted, but he was kind of really conscious of them hearing it together about each other. So I did that. I said, I gave all the feedback, and then I said, there's just one bit where he wants to tell separately. And that was his choice. And I thought that was quite a good, for him, that really worked well. So yeah, I can't remember what the question was. Oh, the
Oh, no,
feedback.
how would we manage it? And indeed,
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
had mediations where, although the parents have received exactly the same feedback, we haven't done it at the same time. So maybe, mum or dad has sat with me and had the feedback, and
yeah,
then we have a little bit of time to answer questions or anything like that, and then that maybe they go out and have a break while the other parent hears the feedback,
yeah.
and just making sure that there's enough space and time that if it has been really difficult for one or the other parent. And usually, what I have found is, let's say it was a comment like, oh, I really don't like it when dad shouts or when mum shouts. For both parents, we need to actually talk that through, right? Let's say it's dad hearing that mum's shouting a lot. He might
Mm,
feel concerned. He might feel worried. He might need a little bit of time to actually debrief
mm,
on that. And of
yeah,
course, it might be quite heartbreaking for mum to hear that, her shouting is upsetting the kids.
yeah,
And
yeah.
heck, in this kind of space, separation can be very, very hard. And we need to be kind to ourselves. I mean, I've shouted as a parent without going through separation. We all probably do
Exactly.
it.
Yeah,
So,
we all
but
do
it,
things
it
that.
can be a really deep reminder of
Mm,
how we're showing up. And that probably leads me to my next question because I'm aware you are a DCA certified divorce coach.
mm.
And in terms of these really big emotions that can come into separation, just almost always in separation, tell me a little bit about the coaching techniques that either help you in this work or some of the work you've been doing in divorce coaching itself.
Mm. I think for me, it's about people feeling, um, I mean, there's sort of very important uh, ways really that people have of dealing with things. And I think for me, what's important is helping people to manage, to find their own way to manage those big emotions, because I think otherwise they can become overwhelmed. So it's really about working with, what are the ways that you deal with things, and where do you feel it, and how do you feel it, and what's some of the ways that you have found helpful, or what are the techniques that you might use. And sometimes it's about physical things, like you might need to go for a walk, or you might need to um, have a break, or you might have a special person that you think about. So it's about finding the individual person's way of dealing with those big emotions. And, when you're hearing something from a child, um, there can be a kind of reactivity, and I think to be able to take a step back. One of the ones I quite like is, sometimes when I'm mediating or delivering the voice of child is for the parent to think, what would it be like if my child was in the room now? How would I, how would I want them to see me reacting? Which is kind of a difficult thing to think about, but it just kind of really raises that consciousness that um, to take them out of that reactive space and to be more responsive, really. Yeah.
Hmm.
And I think generally preparation is really important. I think if people can be prepared or have thought about those things, even just, sometimes, um, just having thought about it and how would I react and what would that be like is a good preparation because, because once we've thought about it, we are less shocked, I think, if we hear something that we weren't expecting. Yeah.
Hmm.
No, what do you do, Nikki?
What do I do? Well, how long have we got? But you're right. It's an individual approach. And in my experience, certainly in when I have the opportunity to work with people one-on-one in divorce coaching, what I find is that when people are in that space and they are very emotional and they can be very reactive, the first thing that tends to drop away is their self-care. Sometimes it's they feel they don't deserve it. They feel like their identity and their value has been compromised. And, what's the point in looking after myself? Sometimes it's because we're bringing in some coping strategies of maybe having a bit too much to drink, maybe too much social media, whatever the focus has become just to help you cope. That can
Mm.
be actually counterproductive over time.
Yeah.
So it's not about right or wrong. It's about, hey, can we replace that with something that might serve you better? And what might that be? And, for
Mm.
most people, it's just a matter of time, as you say, what's going on in your body? What are the signs that you're starting to become overwhelmed? And what techniques can we bring in to help you to get back into that, what we call the parasympathetic nervous system? So we go back from fight or flight. Our biology, it's designed to protect us, and so we're scanning for danger, right?
Mm.
But back in the day, if we were running away from a bear, well, that's okay. We run from the bear, we can come back into our
Mm.
bodies, reassimilate all those stress hormones. But when the threat isn't a bear, isn't a physical threat, it's life. It's all the hard
Yeah.
things that happen in separation. We actually need to teach our brains that we're
Yeah.
not in danger, not physical danger, and that actually we need to get back to feeling regulated and okay.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That's such a good, yeah, it's almost like we have the sort of huge guard dog that's looking out for us, and we need to have the guard dog not in the driver's seat, but yeah, when we need it, but it's actually not appropriate in those moments. I think that's, yeah, I think
Mm.
self-care as well.
Yes, and in
Yeah.
mediation, when we're going to have our voice of child, a child specialist join us, I always take about 15 minutes with the parents or caregivers first so that we can actually be regulated and feel prepared because most parents are nervous about what that feedback is going to look like. And so
Absolutely. Yeah.
just enabling them to have the capacity there to receive.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
the rest of the mediation after you leave us, Sue, or whoever the practitioner is. Often those conversations do focus around the feedback. Sometimes the feedback is actually really, really positive from the kids, and they say, you know what, Mum and Dad are actually doing a great job. There's nothing that I'd really change. They often, if I'm honest, they do say that they do wish that Mum and Dad were still together. That could be
Mm.
common.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that's sort of like the common themes that come through from kids that parents might expect to hear?
Yeah, I think one of the things that often happens when children are giving, a tell because I give them the opportunity to have, three magic wishes. And I think what often happens in that moment is that the parents hear something funny. And I think that can be such a good moment for parents, to go, oh, yeah, that's Jimmy wanting, something, that's kind of outrageous, but so like Jimmy. And so it's a chance for parents to share a parenting moment which they may not have had. They may not have been in the same room or the same space. And then suddenly there they are hearing, Jimmy say something funny. And I think that can be incredibly valuable. So, yeah.
Mm.
I mean, I suppose in terms of common themes, um, not wanting their parents to fight, um, you know, uh, I think that's probably a big one.
I
Yeah.
do hear quite a bit about forgetting gear, you know, the
Yeah.
the um the difficulties that come when if look, perfect world maybe would have two sets of absolutely everything and one's at
Yeah.
one parent's and one's at the other. But these days financially most people can't afford to buy duplicate copies of everything. So I hear a
No.
bit about that, which is
Yeah.
great. Again, in mediation, we can talk a bit about how to take that
How
load
to
off
do
the
that.
kids and
Yeah.
manage
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so
Yeah.
look, it's been super wonderful hearing about the work that you're doing. It's incredibly important work. And, these precious kids being able to sit with someone like you and have their views heard and their voice heard is really awesome. I just
Yeah.
wanted to sort of close off. Is there anything, if you think about a newly separated parent, is there anything that you would love to tell either parent before they make any decisions regarding their children? If you could get them when everything is fresh, we haven't done anything yet, what would your advice be?
Hmm. I think my advice, yeah, it's a good question. I think it's really about making sure that their children are at the center, even though there's a maelstrom of things going on, they've got all these decisions, that they're really conscious that whatever they're doing, whatever they're saying, or however they're being, their children are watching them, their
Hmm.
children are observing them. And not in a negative way, but in a kind of like, oh, is this what adults do in this situation? You want to be the best role model for your child. And to kind of put yourself in your child's shoes, which is really hard to do because you're feeling very negative about the other person, and that it's hard you- for you to see that your child still loves that other person, that they are, whatever you say about the other person, the child, in a way, you're speaking about a part of them. They just want to love both parents. And so it's hard for them to feel, yeah, safe, I think, because often, I mean, that's the job of the parent, is to protect the child from all the bad things. And so when the bad things are actually the parents, where does the child go? They're really, yeah. So to just be really super conscious around your child and
Yeah.
how you manage those things. Yeah. I
And
think
this
it's
coach,
impossibly hard.
yeah. Well, that question that we often ask parents, what would you like your child to remember about you throughout this time? It
Mm,
can be a really good thinking question. It
yeah,
helps parents to sort of consider from their child's perspective, well, what are they experiencing? What will they remember? Maybe
yeah,
they are a child of separated parents themselves. What did they remember and what would they like to be different for their
yeah,
children? So,
yeah.
yeah, Sue, well, thank you so very much. If people would
Yeah.
like to get in touch with you and have a conversation, where's the best way for them to find your details?
So I mean, I don't have a website, but if you, yeah, I don't know, but should I give my email address? I'm
Yeah,
not sure how to
sure.
do it. Yeah. Sue Hurst 31 at gmail.com. Yeah. Yeah.
Lovely. All right. Well, thank you again, Sue. Really appreciate you coming and sharing your wisdom and experience. It's really helpful. And yeah, keep up the good work.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thanks.